Hey, it's Mack with PriceActionTradingSystem.com. It's Thursday, it's March 26th. This will be our chart lesson for today. Uh, this was an interesting day. It was really hard to kind of get a read on it early on. In the end, I think there's a two-tiered channel working higher. And what prices were originally trying to do up until right about here, in my opinion, is they were trying to fill this overnight gap. In other words, the market um, closed up here yesterday at the regular session, and when the regular session market opened today, prices were down in here, so there's a gap between there. You don't see it on the 24-hour chart, but if you went to a regular session chart without the 24-hour data, there would be a gap in there. And generally, prices will fill that gap relatively quickly. So um, that's what in my opinion, when prices were headed to here, that's one reason I kind of like this short. But they ended up going even higher, and they actually broke higher here above the channel that looks pretty valid to me. Um, but it was just an interesting type day, and really, except for the very shorter term trend channels, and some of these, there's even shorter term ones within that. So the more you could narrow it down, really, the easier it made it to figure out. But the one thing you had to keep in the back of your mind was this gap we were trying to fill. And when this started here, I honestly thought that we would make a measured leg down, something similar to probably this right here. And you see, when we didn't get that, then you had to assume that we're going higher, unless it's going to be like we've kind of had the last few days, where it's a trading range type day, and you couldn't make it to a target either way. But once we didn't get there and we started higher here, you should have been thinking, hey, let's get a target off of this first leg up, and look where your target's going to be. That's another reason, and that fills the gap. Um, so pretty interesting that that's exactly where we went to. Um, Once we started going higher here, I didn't think we'd get above that channel, but at the same time, you never know what's going to happen. So get your measured leg and put it over here, and notice how we just barely missed that one. So didn't miss it by much, but and maybe I got that drawn too long. Maybe we didn't miss it. Yeah, we still missed it by a tick or maybe one tick. So it's something to look at. Maybe we didn't even miss it. I mean, that's it. That's a measured leg to the tick. So we didn't even miss it by a tick, I don't think. So always use those measured legs. They come in very, very helpful. And once you went through there, you would have been looking for a possible measured leg there. And if we kept going higher from there, maybe even a measured leg that's equal to that leg and those two legs that were a measured move. So, but it's just amazing how often that'll get you there to the tick. And this one got you to the tick and filled the gap at the same time. That's pretty important, I would say. So, just some little tricks and clues and things that we use to try to keep us on the right side. And so a lot of times, if you notice right here, there's a gap between those two bars. It's hard to see. But whenever I have a line somewhere and it gaps over, I know I got it in the right place. That's a sure sign. So no doubt to me that I probably got that in the right place. I think we're right on there. But that's another little thing that you'll notice often, that when you see those gaps, it generally tells you you've got your lines in the right place. So, but it was, again, a pretty interesting day. In the end, it may just have been a range day. We pretty much stayed. It's a huge range though, and I'm pretty confident in this two-tiered channel working up here. We had the smaller one here. And this is another thing I wanted to discuss real quick before I talk about the trades. Notice this move down. You know, Generally on a second entry, I probably would go long down in here after a break of a channel like that, looking for a retest. But the last few days, every time this thing starts to sell off, it just sells off unmercifully almost. So, in a case like that, you better make sure you're reading it right, and you're better off to wait. And we do have a little shorter term channel there and had a break, but we didn't have a new low, so no reason to go long there yet. But you could also get a bigger channel, and we didn't get a break yet till here. And on a sell-off like that, I'm looking for them to retest this low for sure. Uh, and when it bounced here, draw your trend line. So that's when I was able to get an idea that maybe this two-tiered was in here. When you draw this one right here and you pull it up right there, it tends to fit. Wasn't real obvious yet, but just go ahead and pull it up to the top, and you can kind of figure out where your midpoint's going to be. And by the time the prices got up here, it's pretty obvious that's a midpoint, and it's playing it. And as the day went on, it was pretty obvious that this was right. Um, but you may not have had it until you got this swing right here, and that's why prices turn right there. Generally, that's why always your two first swings, and of course this was your two first swings on a smaller pattern, and then on a bigger pattern. These were your two first swings. So you got to, that's why price action works on any level, because you can just keep narrowing down in, and I can show you trends within trends. This is a trend down within the bigger trend here. And this is a bigger trend down within this bigger trend here. And there's ranges within trends, and there's trends within ranges, and so forth. So, but that's why price action works on every level, um, in any chart. There's constantly the same things are going on at different levels, but it's all valid and all works the same. So anyway, I'm going to back out where we can see it a little better. There's a lot of action here today, and we'll talk about the trades. The first one I saw was here. We had this channel working down, and we had a break and a new low, and we were working up. And notice how we worked through the EMA, and this is kind of rangy looking. And this is just a little trading range almost. It would have been tempting to go short right there. And if you did, there's not a very good setup bar, but if you did, it worked. But I just don't think you can go short right there because of the signal bar. It's not a good one. Notice how it moved on down, and by the time it gets down here, you definitely don't want to go short way down here, because this is what happens to you. It whipsaws on you. But when that bounced and turned up, I like that bar. It's a huge bar. There's no way to get in it except maybe right at the top, or maybe you might have got filled to tick in with a limit order, but it took off pretty quickly. So, it's such a big bar. But, when I see a really good setup like that, I don't worry so much about the bar. I'm just going to put my stop there and enter. But if you're not really good at this yet, you can't afford to do that. So, if you can't afford to, you got to try to get in with a limit order back here where you can get within the 2-point range, and you may get left out. That's just all there is to it. There's no other way around it. Sometimes, if you want to get in the best trades, you got to do what you got to do. And so if you do have to get in this, and your 2-point stop is just back here, and you hope you don't get stopped out. And if you do, it might be a good trade, and you might still get stopped out. So that's just, you got to weigh your options and do what you got to do to get in it, or watch it go without you and not let it upset you. So, but anyway, we had the break, the new low, and then there's two measured legs down, a much higher low, and that big reversal. Just go long right there. Like I said, that thing shoots off pretty quickly. We get a break, a move to a new high, and then it sails off. It was really tempting to go short right here. But everything's above the EMA. You've been better off to go here, but it's so close to those lows. And you're real close to this line. And you probably didn't have this midline in here yet. So really, now that I look, looking at this after the fact, I say, that's a nice place to go short. But I didn't take that trade. I didn't, I wasn't sure that we weren't going higher. I thought we were working higher, and you've got a trend line here. It hadn't been confirmed yet, but it got confirmed right here. But this trade would have worked. So, I'm going to go ahead and mark it green. But I'm gonna just tell you, it's iffy. Um, you know, it fits the rules, and if you're concentrating on short, which would have been the wrong thing, I think, you might have been more apt to take that. And we do have two legs up, but it's just so far down here. But we did get through the EMA and come back and test it, and there is a little two-legged move. So the more I look at that, at the time I was watching it in real time, I didn't like it, but looking back at it, I kind of like it. But I definitely like going long here. You've got your break, move to a new low. This confirmed the trend line to the tick. Just go long there. Um, you can't enter on that first entry. The signal bar is not any good. It's a first entry. Um, you're going long above a doji. Wait on see if you get a failed second entry short, which comes here. It actually came here, but there's too many. Look at all the little dojis. They're making lower highs and lower lows, so it is going down, but it looks a little bit congestive. Uh, so when it broke higher and pulled back and then gave you a second entry long plus the failed second entry short, and the idea that the gap is getting closer, I didn't have any. I liked it then, and plus it confirmed this shorter term trend line. You draw off those first two swings, it confirms that, and so on a shorter term, which you may not even add the bigger one in there. Uh, so I liked it for that reason. Off it goes. Turned out to be a really nice trade. There is a trap right here, but we don't have any break of this yet. And so off it comes. Then you expect it to bounce here. It doesn't. And and I just written in the midday update that every time we seem to get a sell-off, it's pretty dramatic. You don't just get a little correction. You get these huge sell-offs. But of course, we didn't see the bigger pattern yet. Most likely, if you saw that, great. It'd been hard to find. Um, but this is why you draw your shorter term channels, and you got to be really careful before you start looking for your longs. The first thing I'm thinking is we're looking for a retest of this channel here. And notice we get two huge legs down before we get the move back. And you don't understand it at the time. Now that you see the big picture, you know that the trend line's way down here, so now it makes sense. But at the time it didn't. And if you measure that right there, and you see we got basically a perfect measured move to the low, and it bounces. And so always you look for those measured moves. And that's why I like this. I still didn't like going short here. Um, there is a failed second entry long. Yeah, my trend line's probably off just a little as the reason we didn't get back to the trend line. So if you adjust that just a little, it's probably back to the trend line. You still don't have a close outside. Looking back at this one, you probably could go short right there too. So I'm going to go ahead and make that one green again. It is a trap. There's some reasons to like this. It's not a great setup bar. It's not a bad one either. It could have easily been closed on its very low. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that one green. But I just didn't like it because it's so far away from the EMA. That's when some of these smaller trends down like this one will fail and snap back. And that's what happened. It didn't go very far. It went far enough to work to get your scalp, but then it snaps back to the trend line. And then that's your first break. And notice how it gapped through right there. It did pull back some after it gapped, but it gapped over that line. I can show you that over and over and over. But that's a nice reversal bar, and you're looking for prices to test this low, and of course, nice turns out to be a nice move, and then it bounces, and you get a little break lower and go up. But on these moves down, I'd be real leery about trying to sneak in there too early, especially close to the EMA. You'd been better off just to enter here than to enter back here because you're so far away from the EMA. So just kind of wait and see if you get a trap, and you do get one there. And I meant to make that one green. I'm going to change that one to green. It's a trap. I mean, it's really borderline blue. It's a failed second entry short on a reversal, and you're looking for a reversal because you've had your break, you're moved to a new low. Now you've got a lower trend line. If you move it up, it kind of should be fitting in here. There's different reasons to like that uh, long. It is a failed second entry short, but when it pulls back and it confirms that trend line off those first two swings, um, and look how bullish that is. Just take that one for sure. But you probably are okay taking that one. I liked it, to be honest with you, but there's some reasons to be a little bit leery of it. And it was almost worth coming back here, but now you've met this midline, and you should have seen this midline, the possibility of it now. So that makes it a little scary entering there, short, or entering long right into that. I mean, not short, entering long right into that resistance line. Notice it pulls back and it pulls back and tests it twice. That's a good enough reason really to go long there. It's just a first entry, but it's really a double test of that line. I didn't mark it either way. Um, I probably should mark that one, and I really almost like it as a blue one. Um, if you saw the midline, it's probably worth making it blue. I almost want to go back to green because it's a first entry. Let's just make it green. This one's real borderline, but if you understand what's going on, it's not so much. It got plenty for the scalp and then kind of goes into this. Look how many times they tested this, several times. Now you got your second entry long here. You had your break, first entry, pull back, second entry. Everything's still holding above the EMA, still holding above that midline. I like that one. But when it didn't go any further and it comes back again, I wasn't so happy about going long there then. And good thing because it fails. But I don't think you want to go short there either. Um, we still don't have a new high in place after the break of the trend line. You've got the EMA there. I think you're better off just to kind of wait and see what happens. And it does go a little lower. This is kind of a trading range. We are making lower highs, and that would be the one clue. And there is a failed second. This is not really a failed second entry long, but you could treat it like one. But if you saw that midline, that's, for the same reasons you would have seen to go long, you'd be a little bit leery about going short there. Even though it worked, look how it closed right there at that line again. And you can see I'm probably off just a hair. Let's just move that and look at it, how it looks up through there. It's perfect. So there's no doubt that's a valid line. And so just kind of sit and wait. Um, and I don't like going short. I just don't like doing anything right here to see what happens. And then you get a failed second entry short. Notice this little double bottom. It was tempting to go long right there, but I don't think you can. I think you just have to kind of sit and wait. And it does get through the EMA, pulls back and tests it. That's a failed second entry short. Go long when it breaks above, and another nice trade, another nice move. Um, you really could have gone long here too, but I never broke lower and never gave you a little trap or anything. So prices are probably headed up here, an equal distance to what this distance is, but I wasn't crazy about it, so I didn't mark it. Again, it's just a first entry. It's right there at the highs, and then you get your break here, and you definitely can't go long there unless you waited on this bar, and then you're so close to the highs again. I did like this for a short because now you have your break, your new high, but we filled the gap right there, and that was the perfect measured move. Look how far we are away from the EMA. There's a lot of reasons I like going short there and making that completely red, even though you got this bigger channel. Uh, prices are going to come back, most likely are coming back at least to the EMA, so there's plenty of room in there. But there's a chance you catch another one of those sell-offs that does like this right here, and you catch a runner, or like this right here. And that's what why I really like taking a chance there, but it didn't. Notice how it bounces around, and I really thought, hey, it may go higher, but you're already scalped out by that time, so it doesn't matter. It worked. Um, I kept waiting on the failed second entry long to get short. It never comes. You get a second entry short here, but notice how Well, actually, I take that back. It did break higher there and then break higher here. So you do have a failed second entry short, but you don't want to take that one. I really wanted to see it go higher there first, but it never does. So I didn't like entering that one. And then you don't want to enter in this congestion. If anything, you wait for the breakout that fails and it breaks out lower and fails and goes higher. Um, but there's possible there's no break of this little channel. You got one right here, but sometimes those can be a little bit of a fake out, and you have to get another one that's convincing, and you really do right here. Um, and then you get the new move to a new low, and then it goes higher. So, um, and there is a failed second entry long there, but we didn't quite um, get back up to the uh, trend line here. So I was a little, but we didn't quite get to the low either. So I was just a little worried that this might get kind of hung in here. So I didn't mark it, even though it's a trap. I probably should make it green just because it is a failed second entry long. And prices have come off the high, so they're probably going back to at least the midline, which is where they go. Um, and it bounces once, it pulls back, it bounces again. You get a little bullish bar. I like that one to the long side. Um, there's also some matching lows and that little break below. And then it pulls back. You got a trend line working up there that confirms it. You got your first two bars that kind of make the swings. Pulls back again. And so I like that to the long side, thinking you got enough room to get to here. I really thought that's where we would go and turn back down and test that high again. But it just kept going. And you never know. And once you get up here, you really don't want to take this trade. That's your closeout, your new high. And and the fact that we broke higher, you got to be a little bit careful about going short. But you got a trend line here, and it's really off those first two swings like so. And then we pull back. And this kind of confirms it, but this is a failed second entry long, and look how bearish that bar is. Even though the bar that is highest is your signal bar, you could use this for your signal bar. And when it broke lower, you could really put a stop there because it's off that trend line. And we're probably going to get another measured leg like that. I showed you that one earlier. Leg one. And then leg two. And that gets you right. Where does that get you? Right back to the midline. So I like that one. Then it pulls back again, and it gives you a breakout pullback. Notice those matching lows there. It pulls back, tests it, and turns back down. Right off the trend line again. And you're looking for that measured move. And now that you've gotten that, and this is look how congested that looks. But why are we getting congestion there? Because people are still thinking short, but if the bigger midline is there, so prices are getting hung in there. And the bigger pattern ends up winning over, at least temporarily, and it bounces higher. But it's way past 2 o'clock now. So, but I did want to explain that. And that's generally why you get that congestion. And you got it here too. But why? Because it's hung between the low of the trend channel and it's working back to the high. And so it's kind of, but it's not strong enough. There's not enough room and it's not strong enough to go higher. So it just kind of gets in equilibrium and it's just working its way across. And then when it finally touches, boom, it drops real fast again. And there's another one of those gaps. Notice that gap. That one's not as clear, but notice how it closed below it and then it opens outside. So there's one right there. It closed below it. And it did it on both of those, really. And so it's just interesting how you'll see that over and over, and it kind of confirms that your lines are in the right place. For some reason, it skips over those lines. Doesn't really matter why. I mean, I got a few theories, but it doesn't even matter. So for the most part, it was an uptrend, although the sell-offs were pretty steep and pretty strong. Just an interesting kind of day. It was kind of it's really kind of rangy. Notice how prices are swinging still back and forth above and below the EMA. It's just a big, huge trading range, but it's so big and the bias of it is up that you got to be careful about going short. So, but these days can be more difficult because even though it's a range day and prices are swinging both sides of the EMA, they can go a long way uh, either way before something changes. So uh, look at the volume today too. Look at all the bars compared to, there's probably twice as many bars as there were a few days ago when we were talking about how things yesterday was pretty good too, but things had kind of slowed down. Look at the like right here, and that was a pretty good day. But we were getting some days where we weren't having as many bars anyway. And the last few days, the volatility has really picked up. So, um, but really, the best thing you can do is make sure you try to draw your trend lines, your really shorter term ones, and even down to the micro ones if you can, because it just really helps you. Don't draw so much that it confuses you, because I see that people send me their chart and they're not sure what's going on, and I look and it's just they got too much on there. They got so many lines they're making lines up and stuff, and don't get carried away. But there's some skill to this. And you might even say there's a little bit of an art, but it's really not. I mean, you can get close. You can be close and be fine. But if you don't have it at least close, you can be 100% wrong. Completely thrown off. So it's a skill, and you'll get better at it with practice. I mean, I don't even hardly have to put the lines on there anymore. I can almost see them, but I still draw them because sometimes it just makes it clear. And until you can see them without drawing them, you definitely need them on there. And I tend to draw them regardless, because it's a habit. So, but a lot of times, I'll see it going and I won't take the time to draw it. And you might get an ever so slight break that really counts, and you don't see it by not doing that. So it pays to draw them, trust me. But you'll get to the point where you really may not need them. So you'll see it just at a glance. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. We're almost 30 minutes into today's, but we had a lot more to talk about today. So, but we'll be back to do it tomorrow and wrap up the week. But I'm done for today. This is Mack with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.